very good morning to you. Welcome to AM Live this Friday. My name is Olive Burrows and we are discussing the future of medicine. What ails healthcare workers? In just, I believe it was a couple of days ago, doctors suspended the strike notice they had given and they are in talks now with the government. But what are the issues in contention? What are the concerns of those in the profession? We take a look at that in the course of the next 2 hours. But first, the top stories. Rally driver Maxine Wahome is being investigated for murder in the case in which she is accused of killing her partner and fellow rally driver Asad Khan. Khan succumbed to his injuries in hospital weeks after being rushed there in serious conditions with deep cuts to his body. State prosecutor James Gashoka told the court Thursday that circumstances in the matter have changed following the death of Asad. NTV's Raila Mohammed with more.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Rally driver Maxine Wahome was back in court Thursday, almost a month after she first appeared here. But unlike then, the victim of the crime she was accused of harming has since succumbed to his injuries, a matter that the prosecution now says changes the charges against Wahome.
Now the victim is deceased, and that the investigations which have been carried out may require the respondent to record a further statement.
The Khan family, which has sought to have legal representation in this case, have expressed concerns over what they term as slow process in ensuring that the wheel of justice turns fast enough. Lawyer Cliff Wombete told the court that they have written to the DPP to direct the investigating officer in the matter to probe some areas which they feel were not properly covered.
Time is running. We are asking for 14 days. So if we want her to come and appear, or the police want her to appear tomorrow, we need to tell counsel so that we do lose another 2 days. We need to be reasonable.
Wahome, who is out on bond, appeared before trial magistrate Bernard Ochoi for the mention of her case on Thursday. She was first brought to court when the incident happened days after Asad Khan, who was found bleeding in his home after an altercation with his lover and rushed to hospital.
However, I'll be requesting for a review of the ruling.
Through her lawyers, Wahome requested the court to vacate the orders by the court that had directed her to appear at the police station every Thursday to help with investigations.
The suspect has been attending religiously, has provided her phone, has submitted to DNA.
The presiding magistrate Ochoi, however, dismissed the request, saying that the 2 weeks requested by the DPP to complete investigations cannot jeopardize her.
We will therefore mention this matter on 30th of January.
Asad Khan died in hospital a few days after being fatally assaulted on December 12, 2022 at his Kileleshwa residence. Raila Mohammed, NTV.
In 5 days' time, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission will remain without a single commissioner, as the chairman, Wafula Chebukati, and 2 other commissioners are set to retire on Tuesday next week. This is likely to put IEBC in a crisis over some of its constitutional mandate. NTV's political affairs reporter Vincent Odor interrogates.
IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati, Commissioners Boya Molu and Abdi Gulie are set to retire on 17th this month after completing their 6-year term in office. And with the 3 out, the only remaining commissioner would have been Irene Masit. However, Masit has been suspended and is currently being probed by a tribunal. The other 3 commissioners resigned and are also being probed by the same tribunal over their role in the August 8th presidential election after they rejected President William Ruto's victory, as announced by their boss Wafula Chebukati. From 18th of this month, IEBC will find itself in a legal quagmire.
In the absence of commissioners, there is no constitutional role that can be performed. You cannot organize by elections. You cannot organize boundary review. You cannot make plans to hold any electoral activity. But even procurement issues, when you do procurement, the procurement plan needs to have been approved initially by the commissioners, even though the actual procurement is done by the Secretariat.
With no commissioners in place, IEBC is likely to find itself in a crisis over some of its mandate.
If they leave office, and by God's grace or not God's grace, the President of the Republic of Kenya, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, and the Speaker of the Republic of Kenya die the same day, a general election, a presidential election, must be conducted within 60 days. Can the process of putting in place new commissioners have been completed? No. That could be a scenario that can be similar to a constitutional crisis.
IEBC will be in some form of crisis because all constitutional commissions require a minimum quorum for them to carry out their constitutional functions. And the moment Chebukati and the other two commissioners retire, IEBC will have lost that quorum.
Is this country heading to a constitutional crisis? I don't think. There is no country worldwide that, or any government worldwide that will say we are unable to craft a legal instrument to allow us to move forward.
The Kenya Kwanza Brigade is seeking to amend the IEBC Act to alter the composition of the selection panel that selects new commissioners to the IEBC. Opposition members have opposed the move, accusing President William Ruto of seeking to use the amendments to capture IEBC ahead of 2027.
What should happen is there should be an element of proportionality where the various political players and other stakeholders who are important all have a say in the process of nomination of the selection panel.
The IEBC amendment bill is now on the floor of the Senate. Lawyer Omari argues that Kenyans can seek legal means to get a way forward on the matter.
One can go to Parliament and seek permission to extend the tenure of the three commissioners. Just with the reality that the term is ending and a serious constitutional crisis is going to happen, the High Court can extend the term limited to up to the time one others are elected.
For now, Chebukati and the two commissioners are packing their belongings out of the anniversary towers. Vincent Odur, NTV.
President William Ruto has given a major boost to the county governments by announcing plans
so as to ensure that county governments work hand in hand with the National Police Service. Addressing the graduating GSU officers, President Ruto said national security matters will not be a preserve of the police.
Tunataka kila mwananchi ajumuike na kujua mambo ya usalama katika kijiji yake, katika mahali anaishi, na ndio tumesema sasa tuta operationalize County Policing Authority ili county governments wajumuike na national government katika kushughulikia mambo ya usalama katika kila county ya taifa letu la Kenya.
County governors have been pushing for the recognition of the authority so as to help in managing security in their areas. Some county chiefs even went as far as accusing the police of being skeptical and opposing the move over fears it might duplicate their duties. The previous administration opposed the governor's request, saying the authority would interfere with the work of the police. The functions of the County Policing Authority include developing proposals on priorities for police performance in the county, monitor trends and patterns of crime in the county, including those with a specific impact on women and children, provide feedback on the performance of the police service at the county level, provide a platform through which the public participates on all aspects relating to county policing, ensure policing accountability to the public, and ensure compliance with the national policing standards. President Ruto has also made an appeal to the police officers to stick to their mandate and treat Kenyans with dignity while issuing a warning to the politicians not to interfere with the police work.
Mimi nataka askari wetu wa polisi wafanye kazi ya polisi, wachunge usalama, wachunge mali yetu, wachunge watoto wetu, wachunge biashara zetu. Mambo ya siasa itafanywa na wanasiasa.
We, in consultation with the command of the National Police Service and the other agencies in this sector, are working towards reviewing and updating the curricula of these institutions in this sector to ensure that they respond to the complexities of the security challenges our country is facing today.
He has, however, urged them to be accountable with all the resources accorded to them by the state and perform their duties with honesty and integrity. As these officers leave the training camp here at Embakasi, they have been urged to live as brothers and sisters with their colleagues in the National Police Service so as to ensure the country has peace. Martin Mwangi, LTV at Embakasi GSU training camp.
You will recall when the Inspector General of Police, Japheth Koome, met the Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja on the escalating insecurity in Nairobi. He did promise that the county policing authority would be operationalized. Family, colleagues, friends and national leaders have eulogized media personality Catherine Kasavuli as a true icon of the journalism profession. Kasavuli was described by many as a woman full of humility despite the fame and success she had acquired throughout her career. And with that story is NTV's Rukia Bule.
The glory and honor of your name.
Relatives, friends and family of veteran TV news anchor Catherine Kasavuli gathered at Friends International Church along Ngong Road today to mourn the fallen media icon.
Catherine was my ace daughter. Catherine alikuwa na nyumba. Akitoka kazini, jembe tulikuwa tumeweka kwa mchanga. Akitoka kazini anachukua jembe na anaanza kufanya whatever.
When I went to her place, she was at the HDU. She called me, Kulesi, I love you. I said, my dear sister, what has happened? And I told her, you're a strong girl. You're going to make it.
My name is Catherine Kasavuli.
Catherine Kiza Kasavuli was born on the 17th of June, 1962.
His rival Labour Party.
She carries a history of being the first female news anchor in Kenya, where she started out as a continuity announcer at the Voice of Kenya VOK in 1980, which later became KBC.
Catherine was many things to many people, but one thing unmistakable. Catherine always had a smile, an amiable lady, a person who loved people and loved life.
It is amazing that after 40 years, but incredible professional journey, Catherine returned to KBC and was received and embraced with so much love and affection. Meaning that she left KBC with a great legacy.
Kasavuli, at age 60, passed away on the 29th of December 2022 at Kenyatta National Hospital after battling with cancer, but her memory lives on.
We had so much fun because she had a great sense of humor. She always had us in splits, always. She was very kind, very generous, a good friend, very humble.
As many remembered Kasavuli as a bright, expressive and eloquent person with an enthusiastic sense of humor, her only child, Martin Kasavuli, urged men to take an active role regarding cancer screening of the women in their lives.
It is a legacy that I would like Mom to leave, other than her profession and everything else she's done, is just to get men to take an active role in women as far as cancer is concerned. Please, gentlemen, step up to the plate.
A woman is an interesting person because
Catherine Kasavuli will forever be remembered for paving the way for women in media. The final service for her send-off would take place at Tigoi Primary School this Saturday. Rukia, Bule, NTV.
Framework.
She will be fondly remembered, and she was truly a legend. Let's take a look now at the news diary before we get into the dailies. And on the diary this morning, there we go. Ruto begins a two-day tour of the Nyanza region. In fact, that informs the front page of the Daily Nation. Raila changes tune ahead of Ruto visit, as well as the front page of the Star. U-turn. Raila troops now embrace Ruto. What else is on the diary? Let's take a look. Cholera outbreak in Kisumu. Kasavuli's body ferried to Vihiga. And Rockefeller meeting on climate change taking place. All right, let's now take a look at what is on the front page of the newspapers. We've taken a look at what NTV thought was a priority yesterday. And let me pull this up first, though. Just a reminder for those who didn't join us right at the start of the show. Remind you what our topic of conversation is this morning. The future of medicine. What ails healthcare workers? With me in the studio, I have Dr. Cohen Andove. He's the chair, Young Pharmacist Group, Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya. We have Dr. Mukera Gisairo, who is a medical officer, Gideon Gashihi, clinical officer and researcher, and Dr. Liz Bwibo, vice treasurer of the Kenya Dental Association. She is a dental surgeon, one of 1,000, if I read correctly. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes. But first, let's take a look at the dailies. This will come to eventually. This is the press statement released by the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union with regard to the issues that require resolution where the medical profession is concerned. All right, I did mention what the top story on the Daily Nation is. Raila changes tune ahead of Ruto visit in what appears like a decision to put the 2022 elections behind him. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya chief has advised leaders from Homa Bay and Siaya to welcome the president to their counties and engage him on development matters. The head of state's visit to Nyanza promises to be different from the October one when elected leaders gave him the cold shoulder. And also on the front page of the Daily Nation, windfall, tea farmers to get 5.5 billion shillings in pay and bonuses, and rally stomach Sinwa Home under probe for murder, and that is the murder of Asad Khan. And on the left here, we have Catherine Kiza Kasavuli. Tributes pour in for Kenya's TV darling. For decades, veteran journalist Catherine Kasavuli wowed TV viewers with her eloquence and glamour. She also wore an infectious smile that further endeared her to multitudes of fans. Yesterday, former colleagues, friends and family eulogized her as a trailblazer in the media industry. With an unforgettable sense of humor, Kasavuli died on December 29th, 2022 of cancer. She was 60 years of age. So that's what's on the front page of the Daily Nation. Let's take a look at the front page of the Business Daily. Land depreciation hits 7 Nairobi premier suburbs. Regions lose value by up to 11% in 5 years. Analysts cite market correction due to glut. For the list of those areas, let me zoom in. Here I can see Upper Hill, Kilimani, Parklands, Kileleshwa, Gigiri, Lavington, Runda. Yep, those are the ones on the front page. If you'd like more detail, purchase your copy of the Business Daily. This report is by Edna Mwenda. And here we go. Further down the front page of the Business Daily, state bursts recurrent budget forecast by 81.7 billion shillings. President William Ruto's administration projects expenditure for day-to-day running of the government to be 81.7 billion shillings more than what the previous regime budgeted, pointing to piling spending pressures, including salaries and wages. You will recall that President William Ruto said he would tackle the country's debt by 1, increasing the revenue to be collected and cutting down cost. We'll see what the Kenya Kwanza administration has to say about this escalating cost of paying wages. High Court suspends bank-to-mobile money charges. The High Court has ordered Safaricom and the Central Bank of Kenya to suspend the reintroduction of bank-to-M-Pesa charges pending determination of a suit involving financial consumer rights. NHIF drops 43% of members for defaulting on contributions. Economic hardships have pushed 8.8 million or 43% of NHIF members to default on monthly contributions, effectively condemning them out of, I beg your pardon, let me take that again. Economic hardships have pushed 8.8 million or 43% of National Health Insurance Fund members to default on monthly contributions, effectively condemning them to out-of-pocket medical expenses. Musk's data firm eyes Kenya entry by June. Elon Musk's satellite internet firm Starlink announced it will launch in Kenya in the second quarter of this year, posing competition to other players in the industry, including Safaricom and Zuku. That is it for the Business Daily. Let's take a look at Taifa Leo, which I have to admit is my favorite. And the headline today is Wazungu wapapasa Raila mgongo. And a quote here, nilialikwa na Rais Biden kuhudhuria kongamano. Wakenya wafahamu sijatishwa na serikali, mimi si mtu wa kutishwa. And that is Raila Odinga. Here I see he's with the British High Commissioner Jane Marriott at her official residence. So I mean, we can only expect the best from the Taifa Leo as far as headlines are concerned. And they do provide an explainer at the top there. Odinga amekuwa akikutana na mabalozi wa nchi za magharibi na kupunguza makali ya ukosoaji wa serikali. All right, I will leave that at that and take a look. I believe we looked at the Star, although they have a follow-up to the top story they had yesterday with regard to a super bug gonorrhea. Doctors confirm getting many untreatable cases of STIs from Nairobi. Doctors have confirmed increased cases of people presenting with gonorrhea from Nairobi and Kiambu. The medics who spoke to the Star on the phone are in agreement that difficult to treat sexually transmitted infections have been rising in Nairobi, while attention was focused on COVID-19. Of concern is gonorrhea after researchers from the Kenya Medical Research Center identified a strain that resisted all medication. So that is also on the front page of the Star. They have another report here. America offers a 1.2 billion shilling bounty for info leading to arrest of Dusit 2 terror suspect. The U.S. government has offered a 1.2 billion shilling reward for anyone with information leading to the capture of a wanted terror suspect linked to the Dusit D2 hotel complex attack. U.S. and Kenya officials said Mohamud Abdi Aden is a leader of the terror group Al-Shabaab. And I see here cash crunch as Treasury yet to send 258 billion shillings to county governments. Looking at the Standard now, cash is king. As mobile money fees inflict pain, a court has given Kenyans a reprieve after it temporarily stopped the increase in mobile money transfer charges, easing the blow on customers already reeling from the harsh economic conditions, even as others sought refuge in dealing in cash to avoid multiple transaction fees. I see President William Ruto, an image of him at the bottom here. President William Ruto inspects a guard of honor during the 49th General Service Unit pass-out parade in Embakasi yesterday. Ruto to storm Raila's backyard. Nyanza residents upbeat as President begins a 2-day working tour of region considered the stronghold of his political rival and Azimio leader Raila Odinga. And I cannot forget again to mention emotions run high as family, friends eulogize Kasavuli. And as far as Kasavuli is concerned, I believe that is a safe enough subject outside of medicine. Just to get a sense of, did you ever watch her? What have you heard about her? How do you remember her? And I'll start with Dr. Liz Wibo. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much for having me on board, Olive. I think I'm more of the younger generation. I think I watched her when I was a wee little girl, And I remember she was very eloquent, very well spoken. She was poised. She really paved the and set the pace for women in journalism and what we look forward to. And I know her memories and what she's achieved so far. Her accolades are so well deserved, and of course in this hard time we share our sincere condolences to her family, and we will remember her fondly as of course we lay her to rest.
All right. I remember she was not only graceful but gracious. Just an incredible combination there. So we have established that today is the youth perspective. These are young people in studio with me. So I mean, I guess their memories of her may be a little bit fuzzy, given they were quite young, I'm guessing, when she was starring on our televisions. Dr. Cohen and Ove, do you remember her?
I'll be very honest. I don't have any memory of her from before. But I remember what comes to mind when I think of Kasavuli is when she made her media comeback, and I think in the media fraternity, I think she's the queen of news and all that. So her poise, her eloquence. Yesterday I watched Senator Sifuna was saying that you wouldn't even know where she comes from, because where she comes from, people speak with a certain, there's a certain tone that will give away. But for her, you would think maybe she was someone from the UK or that.
Her English was impeccable.
Yeah, impeccable. Her eloquence was just a different standard. Yeah, and I know she has left behind a legacy. It's in death that most of the time you find people go back through memory lane and put into perspective just how great their achievements were. And yeah, she was someone that I think her legacy will live on forever.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. The fact that you might have not watched her growing up, I did, but still her legacy precedes her. So that's testament, I guess, to the impact she had. What about you?
Just like Dr. Cohen here, my memories of her are very hazy. I did not really watch her that much, but seeing people eulogizing her over the past week really gives you some context into what kind of an icon she has been for a lot of people in the media industry. Everyone says she looked up to her and just wanted to be like her. So her legacy precedes her, just as you've said.
Oh, definitely, most definitely. We also have in studio Gideon. Gideon, do you remember her? And if you do not remember her directly, what have you heard about her?
Thank you so much, Oli, for having me. I think I also equally don't have much memory about her. But I just appreciate the fact that when she was coming back to media, there was a lot of enthusiasm around her. And we really appreciate, because I think she was the first, people are saying she was like the icon in terms of women in the media. So I really don't have much memory about her. But from what we have heard, from what we have seen, and from the things we have experienced, people saying about her, I think she's an icon and someone to be remembered.
She struck me as Mtua Roho Safi. You know those people? She struck me as one of those. All right, I'll transition us now into the topic of conversation. Dr. Cohen and Ove, again, Chair Young Pharmacist Group, Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, Dr. Mukeira Gisairo, Medical Officer, Gideon Gashihi, Clinical Officer and Researcher, and Dr. Liz Bwibo, Vice Treasurer, Kenya Dental Association. She is a dental surgeon. But before I invite them to speak, allow me to set some context. So the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Dentists, KMPDU, Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union, had issued a strike notice which they've now suspended to allow for talks, and some of the issues or concerns they've raised as regards the welfare of medical professionals is this: the implementation of the CBA, basic salary adjustments, creation of call rooms and provision of working tools must be done. The national and county governments to urgently absorb all the unemployed doctors and distribute them to public hospitals to serve Kenyans. The Ministry of Health to streamline postgraduate training and posting of medical interns. All interns awaiting posting should be posted immediately. The establishment of the Health Service Commission, the government promised to be mediators of between the counties and health workers within 100 days. All UHC, Universal Health Coverage staff contracts to be renewed and changed to permanent and pensionable terms, and urgent negotiations of 2021 to 2025 collective bargaining agreements. So these are some of what the medical professionals are calling for. And perhaps I should invite my panelists to weigh in on this. How big is the shortfall as far as the patient-doctor ratio is concerned? I'll pull up an article which was shared, I believe, from Business Daily. A colleague of mine, Boniface, was the author. Let me just pull up that article that was shared by KMPDU on its Twitter platform. I'll have it in a moment. Aha, there we go. This by Boniface Otieno. And the report stated the state plans to hire 20,000 healthcare workers to bridge the doctor, nurse and midwife ratios as recommended by the World Health Organization. Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakumicha said the health workers would be absorbed, I beg your pardon, over a 3-year period, subject, I guess that's where the sticking point is, subject to the availability of 21 billion shillings required by the ministry to bring them on board. The healthcare workers, Ms. Nakumicha said, would be deployed to the county hospitals in a plan that is also aimed at attaining universal health coverage set to be rolled out this year. She is quoted as stating, "We intend to employ 20,000 healthcare workers across all cadres in the next 3 years." Ms. Nakumicha, in an interview with the Business Daily, said. And though she did provide the condition that this will be subject to the availability of 21 billion shillings that we require to absorb them. Remember, she says, the coffers were literally empty and we have to plan afresh. Kenya has a total of 189,932 of 189,932 health workers in 2020, with 66% being in the public sector and 58% being okay. These numbers a bit tricky for me there, so I'll leave that there. But moving on with the article, according to the WHO, the prescribed health worker density ratio is determined as 23 doctors, nurses and midwives for every 10,000 people. However, data shows that the health workforce ratio in Kenya stands at 13 doctors, nurses and midwives for every 10,000 people. The data further shows that the country has a shortage gap of 3,238 medical officers, with the required number being at least 5,317. There is also a deficit of 2,313 consultants, 1,070 dentists, 4,614 public health officers, 1,020 pharmacists, 4,167 farm technologists, 3,970 specialist clinical officers, and 9,301 general clinical officers. So before I invite Gideon to explain what a clinical officer does and how that is different from the poster, we can see doctor. So how is what a clinical officer does different, and also why is it critical, right? Why is it important that we have clinical officers? But I'll come to you. But first I'll start with Dr. Liz Wibo, because I've seen even dentists, there's a shortfall of dentists. Earlier I mentioned there are about 1,000 Kenya. We have Marie Clay in studio. You might not see her, but she did supply a Kenya so that I do not embarrass myself this morning, because these are specialists, so I also need some assistance from a specialist. And let me just find it, because there's a term you used, Marie Claire, 1,000, yes, registered and retained. So there are less than 1,000 registered and retained dentists in the entire country. Why is this a problem?
Yes, thank you so much, Olive. So we'll start a bit higher with the conversation with what the WHO recommends, and I'll focus a bit more on oral health, of course. So the WHO recommendation is 1 to 7,500 dentists. That is the dentist to population ratio. 1,700? 1 to 7,500.
Oh, 1 to 7,500. Okay.
Correct.
Got you.
Yes. So currently, as you said, we're looking at about 1,000 dentists. And as it stands today, according to world estimates, we are looking at about 53 million Kenyans. So if you do the calculations, we are looking at a ratio of 1 to about 53,000, which is, very, very way off.
Wait, so the standard is 1 to 7,500. We're at 1 to 53,000.
Correct.
Not 5,300.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what we are looking for, and part of the reason why we don't have as many dentists, is that we have very limited training institutions, especially for dentists in the country. We have 2, that's namely the University of Nairobi, and the second one is Moi University. And again, beyond that, we roughly graduate a class of 20 dentists per year. So you can imagine, on a very good year, we may have 40 new dentists entering into internship and the job market. Actually, Olive, in my class, we had a graduating class of only 7 of us in that year. So we need to look into creating more institutions that will train oral health professionals, especially dentists. And you can imagine, if you're looking at a number of 1,000 registered dentists, now imagine specialists. I think in Kenya currently we have 3 root canal specialists, so serving our population.
For the whole of Kenya?
Yes, yes. So the numbers now, after the 10,000, when it comes to specialists, it's even less. So of course we need to push and focus more into training institutions. We need to empower and establish the already established institutions into providing the relevant postgraduate training in oral healthcare, so that we can boost these numbers and we ensure we are closer to the WHO recommended numbers of dentists to the population ratio.
Okay, so you said there are 2 training institutions in the country. Correct. That is at the University of Nairobi.
Yes.
And
Moi
teaching and referral.
Correct.
All right, so we take a break, but we'll come back with more from the rest of my panelists. And anyone who believes dentists are superfluous has never had a toothache. Have you ever been unable to sleep at night, and then you put in the painkiller and you crash it, and you hope it will ease the discomfort and the sharp pain? Well, if you have experienced that, then you know just how critical dentists are. We take a break, but we'll be back with more.
Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review has got you covered for in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues. The Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched, exclusive and investigative content, read The Weekly Review every Sunday on Nation e-paper and on www.nation.africa. Free of charge.
You know, firstborns are deputy parents.
Yes. That's a good one.
Yes,
yeah.
So I called one of my friends. She used to work in Banana. She's called Wanja, and I thank God for Wanja.
Yeah.
So I went up to where Wanja used to live in Banana, and we sat there and waited for this lady to come. Mrs. Ndongo came, took me, and we went with her to her house, and I started work. You know, I always tell people, if you're given work to sweep here, sweep it until God in heaven will look down and see this place was not swept by a broom.
Yeah.
A heart swept this place.
Hey!
It is a heart that swept this place.
Right.
Changes above and below.
Tropical rainforest is feeling the impact of the change in the weather patterns.
Medicinal plants living on borrowed time. After the huffs and puffs, we tell you about the tiny but toxic cigarette butts. Also, Africa's Tree of Life. We explore the baobab's health benefits.
recharge and get upgraded to make memories with your loved ones this new year. Anytime, anywhere. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
It's the headquarters of good vibes. So I should just kneel and begin to call on Jesus because I'm a bishop.
You know, Dr. Kingori, yes, you sound like a street fighter. Where did you grab it? Unataka noma.
Kingori, let me tell you something. Mimi mtu angenipata saa hiyo nikiwa first year. Angeangukia bibi mzuri.
You know, they always say smart women, where to catch them is with love.
Kingori, I love how your suit looks. I love you in a suit. I love you in a t-shirt.
As in any example, you actually mean that.
Maifungua akili ya msee ama kichwa ya msee ukapata vile watu husema jamaa ana akili.
Tunaweza toa nyama kwa huko nyuma tuweke kwa
kifua. Sisi mtu anakuwa na roho chafu sana. Na ukidive inahesabiwa?
Yes, ndio ukiwin, udive win si umewin.
Hiyo ndio tizi unafaa upige. Napiganga tu tizi ya 90 meters ya kwanza, alafu nikifika 90 meters na fly. Every Friday on NTV 7:30 p.m.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. When we're discussing the future of medicine, I have the future of medicine in front of me, and we're looking at what ails healthcare professionals, workers. I mean, for many of us growing up, our parents, my generation at least, were told either study medicine or engineering. You know, those were the serious professions. And Mukeira, just keep that one in your back pocket. I'm coming to you. Okay, with that one. Gideon, do explain to us why it's critical that we have sufficient clinical officers. But first, perhaps you can start by telling us what it is a clinical officer does.
So thank you so much for that. So a clinical officer is a medical practitioner who is licensed to actually practice, treat, treat patients. So in Kenya, clinical officers is the oldest medical practitioner, which started in 1928. In fact, it's even older than any other. And the reason it started because during that colonial era, we didn't have a lot of doctors and nurses and so on. So after that, we have had this profession for all that long. So they are a bit different from medical officers because they almost work the same way, but their work is to complement medical officers. So I would say their role mostly, if you go to any outpatient clinic today, especially from level 5, which is district hospitals, health centers, dispensary and community health, chances are you will meet clinical officers in the outpatients. So in summary, I would say clinical officers are basically the custodian of primary health care in Kenya. And having said that they are mostly localized in the outpatients, it doesn't mean that we don't have specialties who work in the inpatient. We actually do. However, those who work mostly in the outpatients, we see them as the first line of defense in our healthcare system. So meaning that if a clinical officer is not able to pick a certain disease, then chances are it cannot be seen by a medical officer or even a consultant. So with that, the government has really invested in training clinical officers because there's a first contact with patients. If you go today to maybe somewhere like Mama Lucy, the first person you will come into contact with is a clinical officer who has to make judgment whether for you to be seen by a consultant, whether for you to be admitted, and so on. So you can see they play a very critical role in Kenya. And even if you give an example, if someone has cancer and they don't get diagnosed by a clinical officer who stays in the outpatient, chances are you will miss and then you will come at a later stage. And that is why the government has really invested in training clinical officers. And right now, which is different from previously where we used to have clinic officer doing just certificate. Right now we have clinical officers doing diploma, doing bachelor's, and even doing master's degree. So that in general sums up the clinical officers who are actually protected by the Kenya Constitution and having a cap, which is Act number 260.
Okay, so they're the first point of contact.
Yes, sure.
With the ill, the
yes,
patients.
The patients, yes.
All right. So, Dr. Mokera, looking lovely, I have to say, looking lovely this morning. I spied you on Instagram, but we'll get into that. Do you tell me, did you, I mean, growing up, you know, my gosh, you guys, our generations are so different, but my generation, we kept being told, you know, these are the serious professions, you know, get that A so that you can get yourself admitted to study this. How have you found it so far?
I feel like things are very different now. Our parents' generation, that was definitely the it thing, when medicine and engineering and law were the only professions that you could do to make your parents proud. And I feel like they passed that on to us, but things have changed, and our generation is the one that is experiencing this change. As someone who lived that life and got the grades and went to med school and became the doctor that they said was the pinnacle, at this, where I stand right now, I feel like times have really changed, and it's not as glorious as people made it out to be. Maybe it was back then, but right now I feel like in our generation, your metrics of what a good career is, personally, is am I able to be financially secure? What does my work-life balance look like? And medicine right now is not really looking, it's not looking good, bruv. Yeah, so in my opinion right now, the pinnacle careers will basically be things that will allow you to have a good work-life balance, and top of my head is careers in technology. Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing, sounding to hear. So you're telling us vitu kwa ground ni different?
Vitu kwa ground ni very different. I know this is quite shocking, but I've been running this series on my Instagram about how doctors are unemployed in our country right now, and each time people are so surprised, like, what do you mean? Doctors are unemployed doctors, what are you talking about? But things changed, devolution changed everything for us. Right now, when you finish med school, you're posted for your 1-year internship, and after that, you're unemployed. You have to start, I'm unemployed right now. You have to look for a job. You have to look for a job. And the offers, the working conditions, they're not that good. I probably will earn way less when I get a job right now as opposed to what I earned during my intern years. Yeah, so it's really crazy right now.
That is crazy.
You're really surprised.
I am very surprised. You know, I was indoctrinated when I was growing up. I was told, you know, become a doctor, like you said, a lawyer or an engineer, and you're set for life.
Yeah.
So let me just find your Instagram handle. Give me a second. Give me a second. Give me a second. Because you tagged me in something yesterday, the poster, because you shared it and I shared it.
Yeah.
And is it bundles? I don't know. Okay, it's opening. It's opening. It's opening.
Okay.
But perhaps Dr. Cohen Andove could tell us what your experience has been like. Are you also currently unemployed? Although you're a pharmacist.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a pharmacist, and I think out there's this notion, most people just think, like yesterday I met someone on the street, we had small talk, and he asked me, what do I do? I told him I'm a pharmacist, so he just told me, oh, nyinyi ndo wale mnaandikanga 2x3, sijui meza mbili mara tatu, but it's much more, there's much more to being a pharmacist than that. Right now, like from the, like what I would say, the benefits of having pharmacists, why we should employ pharmacists is that right now, pharmacists, the practice of pharmacists is pharmaceutical, is centered from a pharmaceutical care perspective. Pharmaceutical care perspective, whereby, you know, we handle drugs, and there's an aspect that pharmacy is, like pharmacists are bringing on board something we call medication therapy management. So medication therapy management, basically this is whereby as an individual, we look at you and we ensure that you get there's optimized therapeutic value in the medications you take, and that even as you take the medications, we ensure that there's no problems with the medication you're taking, and there's no medication error. You know, when people look at a drug, they just look at it from a simplistic point of view. But you can be taking a drug and maybe you have liver failure, and that drug is metabolized in the liver. When you're taking it, if you take it that way without having a pharmacist who knows this is what is supposed to, you have liver failure, the drug is metabolized in the liver, you know, the complexities of that, it's going to be toxic to you. It's going to be toxic to you because, you know, there's a thin line between a drug being of value to you and when you take it wrongly, it's going to be a poison. So that's why we should have pharmacists on board. And I'm happy that recently in Nairobi in particular, there was the Nairobi County Task Force report. And this is one of the things that was recommended, that the pharmacy department should be strengthened. We should employ more pharmacists so that we have this aspect of medication therapy management and people we ensure that it's the right patient getting the right drug, the right dosage, the correct dosage form, and even in the right route. So that's why pharmacists are important. And from maybe a more complex point of view, there's even an aspect known as pharmacogenomics. Did you know that your genetics kind of, in a way, affect the way maybe your genetical attributes will affect the way the therapeutic value you derive from a drug. And this can only be derived when you bring on pharmacists on board, people who are experts, the drug experts. And that's why we should, I hope that in the 20,000 healthcare workers that are being employed, we have quite a large number of pharmacists. And I know Gideon mentioned about clinical officers being the first point of contact. Yes. But how many people in the community, each time you have a headache, what's the first place you run to?
Chemists.
Exactly. And that's why we need to have pharmacists outside there. Kenya's population is at 53 million, but if you go to the Pharmacy and Poisons Board right now, currently, it's less than 5,000 pharmacists who are registered. So we need to get these people out there to ensure that we get the right value. And even recently, I know in the news there's been an aspect of gonorrhea being resistant. This is coming about because there's irrational use of antibiotics. But if we have pharmacists outside there, the message is going to be out, antibiotics are going to be used in the right way.
It's true, actually, they did identify that as a major contributor to the situation in which we find ourselves. Dr. Buibo, and I would like you to tell us more, actually, just in the coming few minutes about this Nairobi County Task Force report, because Nairobi County has been in the news a lot of late, especially with was it the Senate committee, I think, which was interrogating certain incidents in the hospitals in Nairobi. So perhaps you could tell us what else is contained in that report from Nairobi, on Nairobi County. Dr. Buibo, does it concern you when you hear it's at the coffers, we found the coffers empty? This is this 20,000 that we've seen Dr. Cohen, Cohen and Ove talking about are dependent, of course. Everything is dependent on resources. In your mind, are we in a critical situation? Because when you talk about hospitals, there are those who are critical. You know, when you're assessing patients, I watch a lot of medical dramas. So, you know, Grey's Anatomy, Chicago PD, Chicago, what is it again? I forget. Anyway, it's the part of that family. Chicago Med, yes. So, are we in a critical situation yet? Should this be a top priority for the Kenya Kwanza administration, this shortage of medical professionals?
I think, yes, it is very concerning seeing that our coffers are empty. In a society, in a thriving society, one of the key indicators is the health of the people in this society. And if we do not prioritize healthcare and make sure we have a healthy population that can drive the economy, then, you know, we're heading more towards the wrong direction. So I believe that we have enough talent to sit down and strategize and see and try prioritize. Let's say we have a budget of 5 billion, we find we have 1 billion. How can we adequately use this resource to make sure we get the most out of it? And I think looking at it from from the standpoint of healthcare workers not being employed and us wanting to employ more healthcare workers, if you look at it also in a broader perspective, it's actually easier to prevent diseases than to treat diseases. If you look at even the conversation on cancer, it's easier to get, let's say, the HPV vaccine versus going through chemo and radiotherapy treatment. From even the oral health perspective, it's easier to promote preventive treatment, and that is, you know, to promote brushing and healthy eating habits vis-a-vis, of course, doing a filling or root canal, which is much more expensive. If you look at it, a toothbrush and a toothpaste, about 200 shillings. If you look at an average cost of a filling, 5,000. So you see now we really need to change perspective when especially we're looking at a limited number of resources. And again, now that brings the conversation back to healthcare human resource allocation. So if we have more people in the community pushing for primary healthcare and advocating for preventive disease management approach in vis-a-vis curative, then we will be able to at least start seeing the wheels turning around, and for us to, you know, move more towards a better direction without necessarily breaking the bank. But I think it wouldn't be prudent to just say, no, we have nothing, so doctors wait. Of course not. The population needs our expertise, it needs our advice, and we can only do that when we are deployed in these hard to reach areas, when we are closer to the community, to, you know, our Wanjikoes, and we can clearly, you know, advise them and adequately pass the correct information that will lead to longevity, and of course having them working more to of course boost the economy.
Okay, and when you say these hard to reach places, I was actually scrolling through KMPDU's Twitter handle, and I came across that some information that in one county there was only one, I can't remember what it was, a consultant or something. I will check. If you can just pull up the touch screen for me so that I can get my facts lined up. But Gideon, the COVID-19 pandemic, wow. It's not too long ago. Only yesterday, the Daily Nation told us we might revert to the wearing of masks again. We've seen the spike that was in China. Tell me, has the situation improved? Because during the COVID-19 pandemic, you guys made a lot of noise about availability of PPEs. I'm looking at the list that KMPDU put up. Give me a second. Ooh. At the list that KMPDU put up, and part of this list is this. All right. Let me just find it. But one of the items I saw as I go about pulling it up was a question of commodities. So what is the situation now, Gideon?
Thank you so much. So I think the issue about COVID-19 came at a point and really exposed our healthcare system and the deficiency that people have been voicing out. So we were able to see during the peak of COVID-19 in 2019 how the hospitals were deficient in terms of health personnel, in terms of commodity, also in terms of infrastructure and capacity to be able to host critical patients with COVID-19. And I think over the few years since 2019, the government has really tried in terms of investing in infrastructure, trying to employ health workers, despite most of these health workers being employed in contract manner. So I would say that we have had significant improvement in terms of infrastructure-wise and even healthcare, improving the number of healthcare in the health facility. However, I think if we get another wave, things might be tough, because the way we are seeing China and the spikes that are coming out from China, it means that the government really needs to continue improving, and we need not to let our guards down. We need to continue advocating for preventive and measures of COVID-19, washing our hands, wearing masks, and so on.
Okay. Yes. Dr. Mukeira, tell me, who are these interns? Because as I was scrolling up to look at what, because you also talked about interns, did you know it? Yeah, because you said people intern, is it for a year?
Yeah.
And then after that, you're unemployed.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the major issues of contention. If I can just find that part of it, might be on the next page. Let me see. So according to what I read, we have a number of interns that are yet, found it. There we go. This is that press statement I made reference to earlier from KMPDU. And they say KMPDU signed and registered the 2017 to 2021 collective bargaining agreement following a very protracted and painful 100-day strike. I remember this strike. I remember President Uhuru Kenyatta akiwafokea, akiwaambia kuna pesa ya magari na mortgage, but we'll get into that. However, the MOH, county governments and parastatals have abandoned the implementation of the CBA, ignoring basic salary adjustments, creation of call rooms. You could perhaps tell us what call rooms are and why. What's a room, like what's in a room, and then posting of medical interns, to the point that 1,000 interns have stayed at home for more than a year, awaiting posting, employment, and provision of working tools and constant consultations that would make industrial harmony possible. So who are these interns?
Okay. So when you graduate med school, you do your final exam, then you're on the pass list and you graduate, and the next step is for you to go for your internship year. You're posted ideally by the government, and it's the government that compensates you for that year. So there is not a specific guideline on the duration of time it should take. So I get people telling me they finished medical school about 8 months ago. They're still waiting to be posted. It's a very uncertain time, and I believe that's one of the reasons why we need a health service commission to be able to streamline some of these issues. So you've graduated, you're supposed to be posted. You cannot do anything because you can't do anything because they might just say in the next 2 weeks you'll be posted. So it's a really long period of uncertainty where you're just hoping and waiting blindly that they're gonna post you. That's what KMPDU was fighting about, that there should be like a guideline on how to post these interns. Yeah.
All right. So, how big a problem is burnout? Because if we're talking about a shortage of, sorry, I forgot, call rooms. What are call rooms?
Okay. So when you go to your internship here, I don't think you guys realize, but interns are like the backbone of the public health system in this country. When you are doing your internship, you're the one who, let's say, quote unquote, runs the show. The consultants and the medical officers just are there to peek and see, are you doing the correct thing? But you're the one who probably is admitting, depending on the facility that you're in, you're the one who's admitting these patients. You're the one who's seeing them when you're, let's say you admit them at night when you're on call. Being on call means, how will I describe this? You are the one who is responsible for anything that will come up that night. You're on duty for that period. So let's say I'm on call tonight, I'm on duty tonight, yeah? So I will admit the patients who will come in, and I will see them again tomorrow morning. Then I will present their cases to the medical officer who's supervising me, or the consultant, if there's a consultant who's available that day. I'm the one who is their primary caregiver, should I say that? Like, I'm the one who's in charge of their care directly. I'm the primary point of contact. Should there be anything that I'm not able to handle, that's when I probably consult the medical officer or I consult the consultant. So when you're on call, you're at the hospital, let's say at night, and you need a place to probably put your head down for a few hours. Should you get the time to even put your head down for a few hours? So typically this is how it works. Let me use Monday as an example. So we're going to work on Monday as usual, yeah? Then I'm on call on Monday night, yeah? So I'll be at work from Monday 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Then my call will start at 5 p.m. and it will last till the next morning on Tuesday at 8 a.m. And I will still continue working from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. You're so bewildered. Exactly. All
right. Okay, at least now I have a sense of what a call room is.
So the call room will be there available for you to use at night. Should you get some time to put your head down, But should anything come up, they're going to keep calling you to go see the patient you need to see or do whatever you need to do. There are some people who never get a chance to put their head down, and they have to be up for the 36 hours that I've described. So definitely you're going to burn out. And depending on how many you are in that internship center, it determines how many times are you going to be on call per week. Let's say there are rotations, yeah? So probably I'm rotating in surgery, and in surgery we only have 2 interns. I'll be on call every other day. If I'm on call today, my colleague is on call tomorrow, I'm on call the other day. So that's the situation on the ground. I feel like people do not know anything about how the medical system actually works, but if you have to have conversations with people on the ground, you would be shocked at how much it's glorified, yet the effort that people are putting in on the ground, it's insane. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean that again leads me up to my question, because if we don't have enough health professionals, because you said depending on the number of interns you have, that determines how many times you're on call. How big a problem, Dr. Andove, is burnout?
Burnout, it's a big issue because remember initially when we had started, I told you about, let's say from a pharmacist point of view, I get Dr. Mokera has treated a patient and the prescription comes to me. I'm supposed to ensure that it's the right patient, it's the right drug, the right dosage, it's going to be used in the right use and all that. So if I've been working a certain number of hours continuously, I mean, even just having the concentration to figure out, hey, this drug, maybe Dr. Mokera has prescribed this drug, and these 2 drugs interact, they should not go together. You know, if I'm in the right state of mind, I've been, you know, paid on time, working the right hours, I will likely detect that, and we're going to stop something that could have been much more costly in terms of finances and maybe even in terms of the health to a patient. So we need to ensure that we have the right amount of workers so that we get optimum value from even the working hours from the healthcare workers, the healthcare personnel.
All right, and Dr. Wibo, can I be honest first of all before I come with my question? Yes. I took extra time to brush. I brushed yesterday night and I brushed today morning because I knew I am meeting a dental surgeon this morning, and I didn't want her to find out that I don't floss regularly. I was so anxious. I was like, I hope when I smile she doesn't tell. But back to something that Dr. Mokera raised, and that is the Health Service Commission. And something she had said previously is that when health was devolved, things changed.
Yeah.
How would a Health Service Commission change things for the better?
So to start off on a light note, the dental profession gives you a nice sticker. You know, the ones children are given in school there for doing a good job, yeah? Yes, a gold star. Yeah. So yes, a lot of changes came about, of course, after the strike, and thankfully we went through the negotiations of the CBA. And I do relate with the sentiments that have been put forward, even during internship and post-internship. And the broader conversation is actually job security for the healthcare professionals. And if you look at it, the reason why we're having burnout is most of the healthcare professionals, they're not having employment that is, let's say, consistent. You'll find some of them work part-time, some of them are paid per day, and of course these uncertainties only pile up and we end up with a lot of anxiety. This anxiety can couple into depression. You're trying to make ends meet, you'll turn around and you have this, we also still have visions of, you know, being a neurosurgeon. In my profession, I'd say probably being a maxillofacial surgeon, and I need about 3 to 5 million to actualize this. So I'm a young profession, I'm starting out, I'm being paid per day, and I need to figure out how to get this 5 million to actualize my dream. And you can imagine how devastating that can be to your mental wellness, that every day you're trying to get more hours so that you can clock in, you know, more revenue so that you can actualize your dream. Whereas again, as the conversation goes back to what is in the CBA in terms of posting and the Health Service Commission, if you look at it, when you're employed gainfully, you'll find your employer will be willing to sponsor you to go further your education. That way you don't break, you know, your back trying to actualize your dream. And in the long run, this is beneficial to the community. We'll have more specialists, meaning we'll have better treatment outcome for our patients. So I believe the push that is going on is very important, and the conversation that we're having is very integral. It's really unfortunate that every so often, actually, beyond, you know, you being shocked that we work for 36 hours, we've actually have cases of people who've, you know, succumbed to, you know, the pressures of society, you know, others who've, you know, drowned into substance abuse. And it's very, very devastating, because, you know, you cannot say, oh, how could he or how could she, because you are also wearing those shoes and you feel the pressure. So I think we are also at a very delicate point that you can see, as Dr. Mokera said, oh, healthcare is no longer, you know, the in thing. So 10 years down the line, how many doctors will we be enrolling into our universities? You understand? And now the irony is, we should be having more numbers. We should be having more people, because our population is growing. But if we're not going to have a full 180 in how the health system is structured and how we handle the healthcare professionals and their needs, then we may have less and less of the young upcoming generation coming into this noble profession, which will be really, really unfortunate. The other aspect of it is, I've had a lot of conversations of actually healthcare professionals leaving the country. So of course, I'd really want, you know, the leadership both in national and county government to really be keen and really focus and really look at this particular niche of, you know, young upcoming doctors, and also just see how they can best support. And of course, we've outlined some few steps that we're not saying there'll be a silver bullet, but there'll be a very good place to start.
Okay. In terms of improving service delivery to Kenyans, Gideon, I'll come to you on the question of insurance. But first, Dr. Mokera, what does it involve to train a doctor?
What does it involve to train a doctor?
Yeah.
In regards to
the time, the resources.
Okay. So let me use my journey as an example. So after finishing high school, depending on the grades you get, the job is the one that allocates you to the course that you're going to do if you're a government-sponsored student. So if you get into medical school as a government-sponsored student, during my time, things have really changed. In the University of Nairobi, we paid school fees of about 26,000 per year. That would cover both semesters, and that would go on for 6 years. So that would be the...
So you're in school for 6 years?
Yeah, you're in school for 6 years. But if you account the shenanigans of the University of Nairobi, who were in school for 7 years, yeah, in total. Yeah, so the duration it takes is about, its standard is 6 years, but depending on where you go and the things that happen during that time, it might take longer. In terms of the resources, as a government sponsored...
Wait, so after the 6 years, like, you know how lawyers go for pupillage, you do internship?
Yeah, you do the internship for 1 year. Then after that, you become a medical officer.
So a medical officer, so you're a medical officer right now?
I'm a medical officer right now.
But you have the title doctor. Once you finish your internship?
Yeah, you're a doctor.
You're a doctor, okay.
Yeah. Once your name is on the list, on the pass list, you're a doctor now. Okay. Yeah. In terms, I've spoken about the government-sponsored students.
Yes.
If you're a self-sponsored student, probably your grade did not allow you to be part of the government sponsorship program, then you pay school fees of about, at the University of Nairobi back then, it was about 475,000 per year. but right now I think it's gone up to about 600 or about 600,000 thereabout. Yeah, that is the resource for only school fees, but of course you have to account living expenses and every other thing that comes with it. Yeah.
Do you get side eye? You know, when you tell people you're a doctor, then you tell people you're unemployed, they're like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, I am like, what?
Right? People do not believe it, actually. I think, okay, I haven't been unemployed for that long because I finished my internship in November last year.
Okay.
So we can say I've been unemployed for 1 month. And during this time, each time
you're between jobs, you?
Yeah. Right now, I'm still lying to people that I'm in a transitory phase. You know, you meet people, they're like, oh yeah, so how come you're not at work? It's a Tuesday. I'm in a transitory phase, but I'm unemployed. I'll just be like, oh yeah, I'm in between. Yeah. But yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I have people talk to me on Instagram. They've been unemployed for up to 3 years. So it's not like my story is unique. It's not like I'm hoping to open a golden door in the next 1 month. I know people who've been employed for 2 to 3 years. So yeah, that's really crazy. Right now, my colleagues, when you meet an older colleague in the field, they're asking you, Doc, I hope you're considering opportunities outside the country. I hope you've started doing your PLABs. Those are exams to go to the UK, your USMLEs. Everyone is encouraging you to leave because you should go where you're valued, and this country does not value its doctors.
Dang. Wow. Okay. All right. So she spoke of Instagram.
Yeah.
So do we call it? I know on Twitter you call it handles. Do we also call them handles on Instagram?
Yeah.
All right. So Dr. Mokera Gisairo, you have a lot of followers. 12.8 thousand. Let me follow you.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, she's a visual storyteller and a medical doctor, Dr. Mokera Gisairo, and I'll engage you more on that because I have problems with my skin. I suffered from acne. And do you know, I follow so many dermatologists on Instagram, and it's really like transformed my life. But we'll get more into the future of medicine. Oh, but I did go see a dermatologist, but it was expensive. I think then it was 5,000 shillings per consultation. So she had her form, and then she'd look at my face, and then there was like a face on whatever form she was using. So she was like drawing where I have the pimples and they were inflamed, so she prescribed antibiotics and retin A and other things. So I did see a medical profession, but it was expensive. I have a colleague, I don't want to say her name because I don't want to embarrass her, but she has a problem with her hairline, so she also wanted to see a dermatologist. So she went to Aga Khan, and she was being charged 7,000. And 7,000, and the doctor was not accepting insurance. So for Kenyans like me, we're like, how is it that doctors are saying they're struggling in life, and we are paying these amounts to get professional help? So that question on the other side of this break.
For you, I will sing these melodies.
Hey yo, what's up, One Republicans? It's the trendsetter right here, Danny Teen Republic.
I don't know what you're doing to me. Don't know what
this week tunawaletea show mbwembwe moja hatari sana. That is why in studio we are gonna be having none other than Lex Seal.
You know you're a property. Baby, break your back.
Not forgetting also in studio the beautiful Bri Sean. Na kama kawaida, amazing dancers in studio. The music policy will be courtesy of DJ Rickmo, the Afro King.
Them go say, them don't know what's in this.
Recharge and get upgraded to make memories with your loved ones this new year. Anytime, anywhere. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
My name is Norman Udipo, former NTV business anchor and also a reporter, currently a communications consultant with Apex Porta Novelli. I was among the few who were privileged to attend the Man Cave, which was sponsored and led by Nation Media Group. I think for me it was the first ever, the real first ever men's conference. And I know there's been all this talk around men not talking. But I think for me, that needs to change because men talked. Maybe not everyone, but men talk. And I just want to encourage men to talk because that's how you're going to cope with the stresses, with the challenges of life. The same way like the women do. So I think for me it was an eye-opener, it was a watershed moment, and looking forward to more conversations, more sharing of experiences in February 2023.
Oh, you're here. I'm going to coat it. You're going to take your oxtail and then you're going to brown it.
Ayo, what's good? I hope you are fantastic. Amina Abdirabah here. This Friday, the trend will be on fire.
Angie, bad.
Boutros with the most trendy jam of the season.
Angela, I know you like teasing, I know you like free.
Mapema your best. I know you've heard that before. Well, we have the content creator joining us on the trend.
My hands, your waist.
Practically owned TikTok last year.
Your energy, for you I will sing this melody.
Lexio, and he'll be coming through talking new projects and new music. Make sure that you hang out with us on Friday only on NTV.
Recharge and get upgraded to make memories with your loved ones this new year. Anytime, anywhere. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Welcome back to AM Live. You're discussing the future of medicine, and in case you're just joining us, the future of medicine, we're discussing how Olive Barrows gets her medical information from Instagram. So if you'd like to follow Dr. Mokera, her handle is Dr. Mokera Gisairo. So check her out and some of her content to continue this conversation online, because she says it's a conversation she's been having. She started a series on unemployed doctors. Gideon, I was asking, we are paying through the nose for healthcare, a lot of us, right? If I come into your clinic, like, let me not name names, but if I come into your clinic, I mean, for consultation, it's a couple of thousands of Kenya shillings. If there's a test, that's another couple of thousands of Kenya shillings. And then now plus the medication, that's another couple of thousands of Kenya shillings. If we are spending so much, and ideally, I know we're having this conversation about UHC and NHIF, but if we are paying so much to consult you guys, how is it that you guys are feeling the shoe is pinching?
Wow, I think there's always an irony about that, but we really need to look at the health worker workforce and how it is structured in Kenya. So most of the healthcare workers are actually found in the urban areas. So according to the Kenya Health Workforce report, actually more than 32% of consultants are localized in urban areas, that is mostly in Nairobi. And we need to have a distinction between a qualified consultant with so many years of experience. So you can imagine, as my colleague has said, the journey that it takes for someone to become a medical officer alone, or even a clinical officer. It takes a lot of years of investment. And these consultants are very different from now we as young Kenya healthcare workers. Because as we went, for the consultant who has stayed for more than 20, 30 years, then we expect such an individual has invested a lot of his time and also resources for him to acquire such skill. Then the service becomes very expensive. However, now when it comes to us, and the reason why probably you are hearing most young Kenya healthcare workers are complaining, is because the field has really changed, and the thing is not as it used to be, because we have so many healthcare workers who are qualified currently, and still we have a lot of people who are struggling to and the status of the economic status in the country is quite different. So I think the disparity that usually occurs between the consultants and the young Kenyan healthcare workers is because of the fact that as we are coming out, we're finding that the field is a little bit changed. But I am really impressed, and I really applaud the new regime of President William Ruto, because he's in trying to invest a lot in ensuring that we have the National Health Insurance Fund coming in and to help Kenyan citizens. Because if we look at the statistics from the National Health Insurance Fund, we see that approximately only 25%, the data that I came across, only 25% of Kenyans have enrolled to NHIF. And I think you have read a headline today showing that out of this 25%, we are having even 43% of this being dropped out by NHIF because of failure to pay for subscription. So we can appreciate that still majority of our population, they are still poor, and they cannot be able to fund themselves this insurance. And that is why I'm really impressed by the regime that is in place, who are coming up with programs such as the Health Insurance Sustainability Program, whereby they are putting a lot of money to ensure that they be able to support our poor in the community, those who are disabled, those who are elderly. Nowadays, at least, they are being covered by the National Health Insurance Fund. So the game changer for all this is, I think, if we, in my opinion, is we invest more in having the National Health Insurance Fund coming in to support us in accessing the expensive services for those who deserve, because they have taken more years to train themselves, and also in accessing very essential service and also employing young Kenya healthcare workers.
Okay. Dr. Andove, how can we leverage the technology? Because I remember Mukiria saying, I mean, now if you want to live the good life, get into tech. So how can we leverage on technology? Because I can't remember who was talking about telemedicine. Somebody talked about telemedicine. It was you, Dr. Bwibo? Or, oh, that was off camera. So we have Dr. Marie Claire in studio with us, assisting moi with the questions. But how can we leverage on tech to make health more accessible? And not only accessible, but how can we use it to better utilize the human resource that are medical professionals?
Yeah, definitely. Because you see, in the world we live in currently, without technology, I mean, technology is at the center of almost all the activities we carry out. So when we talk of technology, first of all, I would say something that we need to shift to is maybe like even information on patients. We should digitize it so that if, let's say, someone deep in my village in Kakamega who goes to maybe a facility around there and has a file. So I don't know why at this day and age we should still be, you know, filling files manually and all that. So I think we should digitize medical records so that, like I said, someone deep in my village in Kakamega, if they have a situation that requires, let's say, referral that is a bit complex for primary healthcare facilities to handle, and if we have a platform where such information is digitized and they've been referred to a facility like Moi or Kenyatta because it needs advanced treatment, if Dr. Mokera is at Kenyatta or Gideon is at Kenyatta, they can just, you know, log into that system and immediately they'll have all that patient information, and it will be much more easier for them to make, you know, derive the patient history and make informed decision based on the records that have been there just by logging into, let's say, an account just by a click, just when it's just a click away, so that we need to do that so that to ensure that such information is just a click away, so that healthcare personnel can use that. Yeah.
Okay. Are there opportunities now to work in telemedicine for you? Fine, like I know Dr. Bibo was talking about part-time work and all of that. Do we have opportunities in Kenya for telemedicine? I mean, if I want drugs, Dr. Andove, there's my dawa, like I can go online. If I want to see a doctor, same thing, because I know during COVID-19 it was something that was happening. Do you think there is potential in that area?
There's potential, but for me here, a disclaimer, what I would say is that it has to be regulated, because you find, I'm usually so, like, it gets me angry when sometimes you go to such, such forums, such platforms, and you find maybe an antibiotic is being sold. And there's some drugs that you're not supposed to get without prescriptions. So it's something that we should look at it, but we need to be very cautious and ensure that we have regulatory framework that puts checks and balances to it. Because like I said, there's a thin line between a drug being useful to you and curing the disease you have. And we need to ensure that before you're using a drug, a definitive diagnosis has been made. Like I mentioned before, irrational use of antibiotics. This is what is causing antibiotics that initially used to work to treat certain diseases are not working again. And if you ask me, if I'm to, you talked about COVID-19, if I'm to predict the next pandemic, then it has to be antimicrobial resistance. So we need to be very careful about that. As much as we want to leverage and bring technology on board, we need to put checks and balances to ensure that it's coming on board, but yeah, it needs to be regulated in the right manner, that KMPDC is involved, the Pharmacy and Poisons Board is involved, so that we're also protecting the common mwananchi, we're protecting their health care.
All right, yeah. And even as we have this conversation about leveraging technology, we also have to be cognizant that not everybody has access to this technology. You show that one you talked about deep in your village in Kakamega. It was Kakamega. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, might be a little tricky for her to do so, and I keep mentioning the invisible member of our group, MC, and she was talking about 70% of a diagnosis is informed by a patient walking in.
Yeah.
All right. Like talking to the patient.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, earlier I'd mentioned about medication therapy management. So even as pharmacists, before we give you that individualized healthcare, plan, if we're looking at pharmacogenomics and all that, we're going to take your history. Yeah, so patient history is very important. So, and that's why even while doing that, technology is okay, but maybe you can be a click away from getting a drug. But if your doctor hasn't, taken and put in context all these other factors, yeah.
Oh, but I can call you on Zoom. Okay, anyway. But do people call you, Dr. Wibo? Relatives, friends, they tell you, these are my symptoms, like what can I go into the pharmacy and get?
Oh, wow. I think the first thing I always hear when someone finds out I'm a dentist is, "Kunai meno?" And I'm like, oh, wow. I'm in a cab, we're going somewhere. How am I looking into your mouth? Yeah. So yes, we always get phone calls and consultations regarding treatment. However, I feel in the oral health sphere, it's not as easy to diagnose and prescribe treatment based on a conversation. Most of the time, I have to look in the mouth. You'll tell me, kunai kitu ya black, and I'm thinking, okay, black to you may be brown to me, and black may be, a piece of roast maize stuck on your tooth, or it may be a cavity, you understand? So we really need to be able to see you and actually tell what is different. And same thing to, some of these other conditions that require closer investigations. Yeah? I'll say probably in skincare, you can have a blister, a pimple, a boil. All these have their own ways to be addressed and their own diagnosis. So it's the same thing in the oral health space. And of course, we're really keen on seeing how telemedicine can be incorporated into oral health and how we can boost it and of course increase accessibility to the population. And I think that will be something very, very brilliant if we'll be able to do it over the phone. But that being said, I think that's why, of course, wherever you meet a dentist, it's not that we love our offices. We will encourage you to just come in, we have a look. You'll be surprised. We'll tell you, good job. You know, we only need to clean your teeth and, you know, make them pearly white. But yes, generally it's just really important to not also shy away for even your routine medical checkup. It's important to just know, yes, you're on the right path. Well done. And you know, also getting that advice, and at times we may give you a slap on the wrist and tell you, I know you're eating too much of junk, maybe let's regulate it so that we don't end up, you know, with some of these diseases that are associated with certain lifestyles. So that's also important, because we'll be able to put a check and tell you, okay, you've told me you have a sweet tooth, so every day you eat cake. Okay, can we reduce it to once a week? And if you're reducing it to once a week, also make sure I see you every 3 months, so that I make sure I keep that cavity at bay. You understand? So yes, 100%, that conversation is really important. As my colleague Cohen said, me knowing you as an individual will help me tailor make a treatment plan that will perfectly suit you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gideon, can I be honest? In my experience, personally, if you see me in a doctor's office, whatever it is, imenishinda. But before I step into your office, I have tried very many concoctions. You know, if it's a flu, I would have gone to the chemist first, like Dr. Andove was saying. They would have given me medication. If it doesn't, there's no improvement, that's the time I'll come and step in your office. And when I come into your office, let me just be honest, I can't get out of there fast enough. And I believe I'm not the only person. A lot of people suffer with conditions for a very long time before they're pushed, we self-medicate a lot, before they're pushed to eventually go see a doctor almost by force, or by the extremity of the symptoms. Why do you think that is?
There's something called health culture and the way people actually behave. I would like to tell you that it's even worse with men. You will never see a man going to a hospital unless they are almost dying. And so I think the culture that people have really determines how they perceive health. Because we can appreciate that if you go to developed world, like in the West or in Europe, you see people having the routine yearly medical checkup. So when we are talking issues to do, for example, with this cancers, in developed world, people just go for screening, for cervical screening, for any types of cancer screening that you can be able to screen, which is very different from us. We have people advocating, we have media advertisement for people to go for screening, but because of the culture that we have, which we can't blame anyone. It's just a personal decision that someone has to inculcate and ensure that they see health as the best way to not become sick is to be preventive, have a preventive approach, whereby you don't have to become sick to go and see a medical practitioner. You don't have to have tooth issues to go and see a dentist. You can just be having routine medical checkup. And some of the things that probably my colleagues are saying issues to do with telemedicine and incorporating of technology into healthcare, in developed world, people usually get even health messages reminding you that you are due for a cervical cancer screening after an year. You are due for a dental checkup after an year. And I think if we can be able to change our mentality, change the way we behave, change the way we perceive health, then I foresee that probably the health status of Kenya will be very good. And just to summarize, there's a health report that came from Mombasa, and they said that 80% of the disease which occurred were something which were preventable. So you can imagine 80% of patients who go to the hospital in Mombasa County, according to that report, is diseases which are preventable, and 50% of which are actually prevented by simple things like taking sanitations, things to clean water, washing your hands after toilet, and so on. So we need to have the preventive approach and change the way we perceive health, and change the culture that we have in terms of healthcare.
Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Mukera. Yes. We see a lot of, and I have not forgotten, Dr. Andove, the question on the Nairobi County Health Task Force report. So you give us like a preview for those of us who've not encountered it. But Dr. Mukera, we now see a lot of health professionals on social media. On Instagram, there's a lady who's a gynecologist, and she's she's an influencer. I just can't remember her name, but
Dr. Claire Kinuthia.
Yes. Yes. And like I said, I mentioned earlier, I follow lots of dermatologists, and there are people here, okay, estheticians are not medical, like healthcare workers per se, but I know a lot of people who you know, those pimple popping videos, like they just sit and watch those things all the time. But do you think because all of you have talked about preventive healthcare, so is does it present social media, does it present new possibilities in terms of educating the public on how to take better care of their health? There's a dermatologist I follow, and so she was doing this thing where she was like skincare habits to ditch in 2023, and she was at a bin and she'd pressed it down. She's based in South Africa, and she was like, so skin, you know, those lists that come up like this. So it's so interactive, it's fun. I paid attention, and she's like, part 1, I stayed for part 2, you know. Does it provide that potential?
Social media definitely provides a great avenue for health education. I also follow lots of doctors, and it's quite refreshing, especially to follow the older doctors, because I feel like they put a stamp of legitimacy on us younger doctors. Nowadays, if you see us on TikTok, they're like, oh, these young doctors are just on TikTok. But if the old consultants actually on TikTok, you're like, oh, wow, so people are actually catching on this. A lot of people are on social media. Like, the power of social media right now is undeniable. Like, you cannot, you can't argue with the reach that you can get through social media. So definitely it provides a great platform to provide health education or create awareness. Like in this month of January, it's Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. So a lot of people will be creating content to create awareness on that and the subsequent months to come. So definitely does. Aside health education, social media also provides a great platform for you as a doctor in the business perspective to reach clients. I know of a friend of mine who's a dentist. I think you know him, Dr. Naf Masharia.
Yes, I follow him actually.
You do?
Yeah.
So I've seen Dr. Naf Masharia really grow from like social media, dancing on TikTok, educating his followers. He has like case days where he teaches people new things every day. So, and he actually gets clients from TikTok. So people in the next 10 years, you have to now combine those two skills. Not even in the next 10 years, even now.
Now,
you have to combine those two skills.
Said now, bruv.
Yeah. And it really sets you apart. I've seen what it can do, and it's really amazing.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Dr. Andove, there's that reports we were talking about. And let me just give some context. Context, really? No, okay. But healthcare in the counties has been a sore subject for some. We've seen complaints lodged. We've seen the Senate, for example, getting involved, as they did in the case of Nairobi County. This is KMPDU medical professionals when they appeared before that committee. This was in November, and these are some of their recommendations: equipping the level 5 hospitals to handle serious emergency medical cases, training of more healthcare personnel, including specialists, operationalization of a professional and well-equipped KNAS. What is that? KNAS? Clue? Acronym for?
Kenya National Health Sector, Strategic Sector.
Kenya National? Okay. Okay, yeah. Increased healthcare sector funding, employment. I mean, Kenya made certain commitments that are even yet at this time to be implemented. So we're still a long ways off in terms of health sector funding, employment of more healthcare workers, creation of health service commission. I still haven't found that tweet about a county having one consultant. Who is a consultant, by the way, Dr. Ndove?
A consultant is someone who, after they've done their undergraduate and after a specific period of practicing, they've gone on to specialize and done their masters, and they are specialized in that particular field they're practicing in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell us about this task force report.
Okay, the task force report, it was, I think it was, I can't remember the exact number of pages. It was a long report, and I would say I'm a proponent of that report because there's a quote by Max Dupree that says that the first duty of a leader is to define reality. The last is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. So what this task force report, it puts into perspective the challenges that the healthcare, let's say in Nairobi, for the Nairobi one now in particular, it puts into perspective the challenges that are being faced. It puts into perspective, like right now, Governor Sakaja has all the data of how the number of clinical officers, the number of medical officers, the number of pharmacists, the number of dentists, the number of nurses in the county, and not only the number that are employed, there's, you know, that shortfall. So there were 8 main, basically the report was hinging on 8 main things, but off the cuff I can mention 3. I think the first one was strengthening primary health care. Primary healthcare through healthcare financing, and on that particular aspect, you know, we need to relook at how we are financing. We need to relook at the amount of money we're putting into our healthcare. Just diverting a bit from the county, you find that Kenya is a signatory to the 2001 Abuja Declaration. But if you look, that recommends that at least 15% of the budget is supposed to be allocated to healthcare. But if you look at the financial year, the current financial year we're in, the amount that has been allocated to healthcare is less than 5%. I think around 4.4% to be exact. And the other thing that the Nairobi County Health Task Force reform was, the recommendations that was giving, it was about improving service delivery. And from, because most of the parts that I looked at was from the pharmacy context, on improving service delivery, we have health products and technologies, because we have, you know, the medicines and all that. The county is going to procure that, but who's going to give out this medicine? So the task force report, from a pharmacy perspective, it recommended that we need the health personnel. So it recommended employment of at least 160 pharmacists to be done almost immediately, and 190 pharmaceutical technologists. So you see, even that way it goes along. If the county employs 160 pharmacists, 190 pharmaceutical technologists, and even other cadres were recommended, it's even going along in solving the, you know, the crisis our generation is facing post-internship of employment. And then the last, something else that the task force report recommended was, I think it was on giving attention to proper clinical training. You see, Olive was staring at I'd put it as a generational crisis. Me, I'm the firstborn of the Gen Z, and then especially Gen Z are the ones that are affected, and there's, you know, that the millennials that were born mainly in the early 90s. Because what used to happen is that after you are done with your medical officer internship, pharmacist internship, dentist internship, you would finish your internship and the government would post immediately. But this generation, this group of people, especially from around, I think 2017 to be exact, you are just, after finishing internship, you are outside there. And now what is happening is that because there's no these opportunities, counties are not employing people. So we're looking at, the number of people going into clinical practice is shrinking, because you know that counties are not employing people, and then when people are not going to clinical practice, again, they're not going to specialize in that. So we can look at, if we don't address this issue urgently, 40 years from now, you won't be having your, you know, your urologist, because the medical officer didn't go to practice clinically. Maybe there's a term we're using to refer as amorphously. Maybe they went practice some certain role in the private sector. So, you know, this is something that needs to be addressed very urgently. And as I conclude on that, I want to make a passionate appeal to the powers that be, the minister, the CS for health, the PS for health, that those over 1,000 interns, medical officer interns, pharmacist interns, dentist interns. Over 1,000 of them, they have finished their 5 years, their 6 years, and like Dr. Mokera said, 7 years in some instances. You talked about the strike in 2017. Most of these guys were in school. At that time, that strike kept them out for almost 1 year. So someone has been waiting for 7 years. They have graduated, but they're still waiting for a further almost 1 year because the government hasn't posted them. And the requirements of KMPDC and PPB is that it's mandatory for you to do that internship before you can get your license. Like in my case, after I finished my 5 years of pharmacy school and 1 year internship, that's when now I sat for the Pharmacy and Poisons Board Stage 2 exam and got my license, because you can't do anything. So we have over 1,000 of my peers, of my colleagues out there stranded. They can't do anything because they can't apply for a job, because if you go to apply for a job, they'll ask you, where's your KMPDC license? Where's your PPB license? You need to finish your internship. So I'm just making a passionate appeal to the CS for Health, to the PS for Health, and the powers that be in the health sector. Please address this issue for the sake of posterity in the healthcare sector.
All right. So I'll invite the other, because he's had his last word. Dr. Mokera, Gideon, Dr. Bwibo. We're going to do, for millennials, we're going to tweet. For Gen Z, we're going to TikTok. Your last word, Dr. Bwibo.
So I'll focus a bit on oral health. And good oral health is, of course, an integral part of overall well-being. And it should be at the forefront of primary healthcare. Even as we're having these conversations, we should always have oral health at the forefront. And again, my appeal is, of course, to the national government and to the county government to pay keen and special interest in the oral health wellness of the people of the country. And this they can achieve through adequate and appropriate human resource allocation of oral health providers, and of course establishment and equipment of oral healthcare centers throughout the nation, so that we can of course provide good oral health treatment to the people of the country.
All right, Dr. Mokera?
I think for me, my word will be to my colleagues who were in the same boat with. I see a lot of my colleagues on Twitter, they are depressed, they are very frustrated with the situation we're in. So I'd like to just urge them, if you're able to look for opportunities abroad, since that's what everyone is advising us to do your PLABs, do your USMLAs, get your things in order. If you're not interested in clinical, I get a lot of people asking me like, so have you considered practicing in the UK? Myself, the way the system is set up, I feel like the system is set up for you to survive, not to thrive or grow in any way. So it has really put me off like clinical practice. So if you're like me who's seeking non-clinical opportunities, do not be afraid to like talk to people. I feel like each day I discover, wow, this degree of mine can actually do something for me that I did not think it would. So just keep networking, keep talking to people. You'll find out there are so many things that you didn't know about. I feel like we're raised to just think in one traditional way. When you go to med school, you have to go into clinical practice. When you decide to specialize, you'll go into surgery or internal medicine or whatever, and that's your path. So when people usually ask me, so now if you don't want to do clinical practice, are you still a doctor? Just shut that noise and do the things that make you happy. Put yourself first.
All right.
Yeah.
Put yourself first. Ni muhimu. Gideon, your last word.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting us. So my last word is probably to two people. First of all, the government, specifically the Ministry of Health, headed by the new CS. So I'm urging her to actually see how she can address the challenges that are being experienced, and how she can collaborate with the county government to ensure that the plight of healthcare workers, which are very genuine, which are very obvious and glaring, that they can be addressed. So the other thing is for young Kenya healthcare workers not to give up, to continue pushing on, to continue looking for opportunities. And just to sum it up is they should not wait for opportunities, but they should create those chances and opportunities. Thank you.
Amen. I will leave it there because there is a mole that I want Dr. Mokera to look at. I'm kidding. But, but we will retweet some of these KMPD communication. Just give Kenyans a sense of what it is that's at issue. I can see in here that there were some concerns raised about representation of doctors and medical professionals in government, because that is where policy decisions are made. I can see doctors continue to be trained by more than 9 universities in Kenya. Many more who have struggled their way to obtain education are out of a job, and HIF reforms is at the heart of the country's financing for healthcare. And however, we are concerned that the institution's management and governance structure remained unstable, and on it goes. But we'll retweet some of this on NTV Kenya just to keep the conversation going. On that note, we converge this morning, as is the case on Fridays. Nation FM, we're heading to the Nation FM studios. The weekend is here. Happy Friday.